Welcome back to another console collector video. Alright, let's kick off part 10 as we take a look at some handheld consoles throughout history. Let's take a look at some handhelds throughout history. Kicking things off in 1980 with the Game & Watch series. The original retail price of most Game & Watch handhelds was $20 US. Adjusted for inflation, that's about $65 US today. Game & Watch was a line of handheld electronic games produced by Nintendo from 1980 to 1991. Each Game & Watch features a single game to be played on an LCD screen in addition to a clock, an alarm, or both. It was the earliest Nintendo product to gain major success and one of the first successful portable handheld consoles. The best-selling unit was Super Mario Bros. Special. The final unit made was Mario Juggler. Now, the Game & Watches came in a variety of variations. So looking at this one here, this is Mario Brothers. It's a folding clamshell design. So you can see Mario and Luigi on the front there. Opens up like a book. And here you can see it just has static images printed on the background, and your character would just bounce around. So this side is Luigi, this side's Mario. That's one variation. This one here is more like a Game Boy Advance style. You got your little buttons here, jump, same thing, static image, and then LCD characters would show up. This one has a little neat kickstand, and Game & Watches typically took these little circle batteries like that. They're all battery powered. So there's that variation. They have this unique variation, which is Donkey Kong Jr. It's more like a traditional Game Boy, but this actually lifts up into place. And there's a mirror in there, you can see. And basically, the image would be shown up here and be reflected down onto the mirror, and that's what you actually look like or look at. Now this piece here is actually transparent, so you'd actually provide a light. The light from the room would provide light to shine through there. This is one of the more unique Game & Watches, that's for sure. And now I have this variation. This is the Zelda Game & Watch. Just simply called Zelda. It's this style. It's more like a DS actually. You got your D-pad here, your attack, and then option buttons. Same thing again. We got static images printed on the back. Some people say that the Game & Watches eventually inspired the DS because you can see it's got the clamshell design and the dual screens just like a DS. Again, battery operated, and some really nice artwork. So that's some of the Game & Watches. There are dozens of different variations, even different ones that you don't see here. There were some that even had little controller things that came out of the console. So yeah, that's the Game & Watch series from 1980 to 1991. Let's talk about the original Game Boy from 1989. Its original retail price was $89 US. Adjusted for inflation, that's $184 US. The Game Boy was an 8-bit handheld game console which was developed and manufactured by Nintendo and released in North America in July 1989. It was the first console in the Game Boy line. Game Boy is the successor to the successful Game & Watch series. A large portion of the Game Boy titles were watered-down versions of the NES titles. The Game Boy used cartridge-based media for its games that could be changed out to allow multiple games to be played on a single console. There were several variants of the original Game Boy released from the Play It Loud line of Game Boys. They were multicolored versions of the Game Boy. Redesigned but not entirely revamped versions of the Game Boy were released in 1996 in the form of the Game Boy Pocket. Basically a slimmed down version of the original Game Boy that came in a number of colors. The Game Boy line of consoles mainly competed over the years against Sega's Game Gear, NEC's Turbo Express, Atari's Lynx, SNK's Neo Geo Pocket Color, Tiger's Gamecom, and the Tiger handheld line of game units. Despite all the competition, even with better technology, the Game Boy remained on top and was the best-selling handheld of all time through the 90s due to its great line of titles, its cheaper price compared to the competitors. So this here is the OG Game Boy. You got your D-pad, your B and A, your start select. You got a speaker here, headphone jack there, volume here, link cable connector port there. Got your contrast here, which allowed you to control the contrast of your green and black non-backlit, no color screen. Your AC adapter could go there, and then you got your power button and your cartridge slot. Now the Game Boy took 4 AA batteries. The battery life on this thing was fantastic. This is what a Game Boy cartridge looks like. This is Castlevania Legends. Basically, you would slide it into the back here, click this on, and it actually locked in right here, preventing the game from being pulled out once it was in. Because, you know, kids back then would try to yank that out. So after that, you were ready to rock and roll. Now, this is the Game Boy Pocket. As you can see, it's a thinner version. It's not as tall. It's definitely got a better screen than the original Game Boy. It's still black and white, no color, no backlight, but it is a little bit larger and it's just more clear. Same setup as the original Game Boy. You got your D-pad, B and A, start select, your speaker. Now the AC adapter port is here beside the headphone jack. You got your cartridge slot, your power slot, no more game lock on there. Got your contrast over here now, and then your expansion port there for the link cable and your volume. Same deal where you just slide your cartridge in, turn on, you're ready to go. Definitely a better form factor, more slick and compact, better for your pocket. Now, one accessory I wanted to mention here that was released for the original Game Boy is the Game Boy camera. This thing basically allowed you to take photos on your original Game Boy. The quality is absolutely terrible. It was a really neat thing for kids to have back then. This little head here would swivel so you could do selfie mode, or you could take photos out in the world. The thing is quite unique for its time. Yeah, that's the Game Boy camera. There was a way to print your photos afterwards with this Game Boy printer, as you see right over there. So in 1994, Nintendo released the Super Game Boy. It was a special cartridge for the Super Nintendo that allowed you to play your Game Boy games on your TV through the Super Nintendo. The original Game Boy was home to many great classics, such as Super Mario Land 2, which was Wario's debut game, the iconic Tetris, and we saw the debut of Pokemon and Kirby on the original Game Boy. The rarest game for the original Game Boy is Amazing Tater. It had a ridiculously low print run and sold fairly poor. The best seller was Tetris. It was the pack-in with the system. If you had an original Game Boy, you had Tetris. The final game released for the original Game Boy was actually Pokemon Yellow. So that's it. That's going to wrap up the Game Boy and the Game Boy Pocket from 1989 and 1996. On to the Atari Lynx from 1989. Its original retail price was $179 US. Adjusted for inflation, that's $371 US. The Atari Lynx is a 16-bit handheld game console that was released by Atari in September 1989 in North America. It was the world's first handheld electronic game console with a color LCD screen. It was also notable for its advanced graphics and unique layout. The Lynx used a distinct slim card-style cartridge. The first model of the Lynx was highly criticized for its terrible battery life, even worse than the Sega Game Gear, and its initial high price. In July 1991, Atari released a revision for the Lynx that was smaller, had better battery life, and improved hardware. After many years of less than stellar sales, the Lynx was discontinued in 1996, along with Atari's last video game console, the Atari Jaguar. The Lynx saw lots of great ports like Paperboy and Miss Pac-Man. The rarest game was Lemmings, and the final game released on the Atari Lynx was Battlezone 2000. So this here is the Atari Lynx Model 1. It's got a D-pad here, you got the on and off button here, options restart, the flip and options 2 button. You got your A and B here, and your B and A here. Up top you got volume, headphone, another output, and power. They call this comm links, so basically like link cable. On the bottom you got your brightness, and then here is where you would load the games up. They would slide into the port here. Now, this is what an Atari Lynx cartridge looks like. It's got this little hook on it, like so. You can kind of see. They could actually stack together nicely like so. And there was another revision of the Lynx cartridge, like this guy here, which is much different, as you can see. And it has these little tabs on the back, opposed to the hook. So you would insert your game cartridge like so. You close the flap and it would stay in there nice and secure. This thing ran on 6 AA batteries, and it just ate those batteries up quick. Terrible, terrible battery life. Now what's really unique about the Atari Lynx is some games you could actually play vertically, like so, or like this. Mainly there's games like Clax and stuff that would play vertically like that. But yeah, it was very versatile. That's what the flip button was for. So you can play like this, or you can play like this. Great if you're left-handed or right-handed. So yeah, very versatile. Now this here is the Lynx Model 2. As you can see, it's not as long. It's still as tall, and it's about the same thickness. But it had an improved screen, better battery life, and it could still do the whole flipping thing. It was just more comfortable. It didn't feel so wide. And now the cartridge port was also external on it, like so, which was much easier than that hidden away compartment. Again, this thing just ate batteries like crazy. It did have a better battery life, but it still wasn't great. Nothing compared to the original Game Boy. So, that's the Atari Lynx from 1989. Next up is NEC's Turbo Express from 1990. The original retail price was $249 US. Adjusted for inflation, that's $491 US. The Turbo Express is a handheld video game console from NEC Home Electronics, released in late 1990 in the United States. It is essentially a portable version of the TurboGrafx 16 home console that plays the TurboGrafx Hue cards. The Turbo Express had some unusual add-ons such as the TV tuner. The Turbo Express featured a backlit screen, but like many of its competitors with full-color backlit screens, its battery consumption was absolutely terrible. The Turbo Express was considered a commercial failure, basically due to poor marketing and its extremely high launch price. The Turbo Express suffered the same fate as its home console counterpart, with poor sales and a short time on the market. So this is the NEC Turbo Express. It has a really great screen on it, bright, colorful. You got your D-pad, your action buttons. Here's the turbo switches, your start and run button. It literally is a portable TurboGrafx 16. Here you got your volume and your brightness, headphones and AC port. Here you got the battery compartment. It took 6 AA batteries, and it ate those real quick. Here you've got the expansion port. So that's where stuff like this TV tuner would come in. This tuner, you could basically get TV on your Turbo Express. Even had AV out. So it would basically plug in to the side, like so. Get it in there. And then there's a little screw on the side here. And you would screw it in. So yeah, that thing is called the Turbo Vision. As for the back, there's the cartridge slot, and it does play TurboGrafx 16 Hue cards. Pop that in, click it on, it's got the lockout similar to the original Game Boy. Then you are ready to play your TurboGrafx games on the go. So that is the Turbo Express from 1990. Alright, that wraps up part 10. Stay tuned for part 11.